So this is what the scene looks like in the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv. This is, of course, the central Maidan Square, one of the key iconic locations in central Kyiv. Early this morning, Kyiv, of course, woke up to sounds of loud explosions, which were later confirmed to be military strikes by the Russian. And the incursion into Ukraine that we've been talking about for several weeks now has begun. And it's not just the Ukrainian capital that has come under attack, but several other crucial strategic cities across Ukraine that have come under attack by the Russians. Remember, the operation, according to the Russian president, was meant for the Donbas region. But with respect to what is happening in Ukraine, several other cities have, of course, come under attack. So this is the range of the number of cities that have, of course, come under attack. Remember, the Donbas region, the region highlighted in the orange color, is where Russian President Vladimir Putin said he had sanctioned the military operation for. But look at the number of cities that have come under attack. Kharkiv, Dnipro, Odessa, Mariupol, and of course the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv, as well. And these are the visuals from Kyiv in Ukraine, where a massive explosion has in fact happened. More reports are expected in terms of what's exactly being attacked here. Is it the strategic key infrastructure of Ukraine that Russia at this point of time is going about systematically destroying? Is that what Russia, of course, intends to do by focusing on this key infrastructure of Ukraine so that its ability to fight back is limited? Ukraine, of course, has sealed off its airspace at this point of time, and according to reports that have come in, at least about one individual is said to have died. Let's also once again listen to what the Russian president has had to say as he sanctioned the military operation in the Donbas region.
Обстоятельства требуют от нас решительных и незамедлительных действий. Народные республики Донбасса обратились к России с просьбой о помощи. В связи с этим, в соответствии со статьей 51 части 7 Устава ООН, санкции Совета Федерации России и во исполнение ратифицированных Федеральным собранием 22 февраля сего года договоров о дружбе и взаимопомощи с Донецкой Народной Республикой и Луганской Народной Республикой, мною принято решение о проведении специальной военной операции. Ее цель – защита людей, которые на протяжении 8 лет подвергаются издевательствам, геноциду со стороны киевского режима.
So this is what the scene presently looks like. If you look at the map of Ukraine, the cities that have come under attack, we're given to understand that all of these cities have been attacked with missile strikes. We do not know as to what is the nature of these missiles that were used in carrying out these strikes on these different cities. But at this point of time, this is the extent of the spread of the war that we are looking as we speak, of the Russian incursion that has now taken place in Ukraine. And also the information that is emerging from Ukraine is pretty sketchy in terms of what is being targeted by the Russians. Is it key critical infrastructure? Is that what Russia wants to take down? What is Russia after? All of this information at this point of time is yet to filter out of the country at this point of time. Because remember, it is only in the last 6 odd hours that entire of this crisis has begun to unfold. It started at a time when the United Nations Security Council was, of course, in session. And even as the session was underway, Ukraine woke up to loud explosions that took place in Kyiv and indeed in other Ukrainian cities. Let's also now listen to some of the condemnation that has come in from different leaders around the world. But remember, Ukraine has been insisting for quite a long while now that condemnation alone is not enough. There needs to be a strong deterrence to halt Russia in its steps.
It's too late, my dear colleagues, to speak about de-escalation. Too late. The Russian president declared a war on the record. Should I play the video of your president? Ambassador, shall I do that right now, or you can't confirm it?
President Putin in the name of humanity, bring your troops back to Russia. In the name of humanity, do not allow to start in Europe what could be the worst war since the beginning of the century.
We strongly urge Russia to respect the principles of the UN Charter, to refrain from any further escalatory actions, and to engage in meaningful diplomacy. We reiterate the unwavering support of Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania for Ukraine's sovereignty, independence and territorial integrity within its internationally recognized borders. We, with the international community, stand in solidarity with Ukraine.
All right, so that is what some of the leaders, of course, of the UNSC had to say. We also heard from the Ukrainian representative of the UNSC who said that this is not the time to be talking about de-escalation because the war has already started. And things, of course, can get worse from here. It remains to be seen as to what happens in the next few hours, which are very, very crucial in terms of what Russia intends to do and how far it intends to take this conflict forward. The visuals that are coming in from different cities of Ukraine are very concerning. There have been missile strikes that have been reported in several key cities. The capital city of Kyiv, in Kharkiv, in Odessa, amongst a whole host of other places. What is Russia trying to target? Is it taking down key Ukrainian infrastructure, which possibly would make it difficult for Ukraine to defend itself? Is it trying to seek out targets such as airports and other places of... At this point of time, all of this is still speculation. Information still needs to filter out of Ukraine. But what is quite clear is that there have been several missile strikes that have been carried out by the Russians on deep inside the Ukrainian territory. And according to reports that have come in at this point of time, at least about one individual in Ukraine has also lost his life. Russia, for its part, in the Donbas region, carried out the evacuation of several people from the frontline areas in Ukraine. So the people that we've spoken to on the ground have said that Ukraine has not resorted to carrying out evacuations of any of its own citizens from the front lines, at least not yet. But from the visuals that are coming in, this is of course a deeply concerning moment, as the war that we've all been talking about since the middle of November last year, when Russia began to amass troops along the border with Ukraine, has now well and truly begun. But how far and how widespread will this conflict be is, of course, something that needs to be seen with respect to what Russia, of course, intends to accomplish with this incursion. Back in 2014, when Russia had annexed the Crimean Peninsula from Ukraine, Russia had a clear objective, which is why its war was decisive and quick, and the conflict did not drag on for a long time. But this time round, the Russian objective is not very clear. What does Russia intend to accomplish with this incursion that it has carried out has not been clearly spelled out by the Russian president. A lot of political commentators have been talking about the possibility of the dismemberment of the Ukrainian nation as we know it, because Russia on Monday night also recognized the breakaway regions of Donetsk and Luhansk. It recognized them as independent republics, and it remains to be seen as to how far Russia would be willing to push itself to go on and carry out this incursion. And all of this, of course, will be determined. We'll get to know about this in the next 24 hours once the Russians open their cards in terms of how deep they're in fact willing to go inside of the Ukrainian territory to carry out the incursion that they have now resorted to. Now, one person is dead, one person is wounded, and the visuals that you're looking at on your screen is the Russian armor that is now beginning to roll into the Donbas region. And this does look like a full-scale invasion, at least into the Donbas region at this point of time. And there have been concerning reports that some of the soldiers who were stationed in Belarus were also, in fact, moving into Ukraine. These were some of the reports that have come in. And this, of course, remains an extremely concerning moment in terms of what the Russian intentions are. Because all through this conflict, Russia had been insisting that it had no plans of invading into Ukraine. But this morning, before sunrise, the Ukrainian skyline lit up with big explosions as soon as the Russian President Vladimir Putin, of course, put out the statement that he had sanctioned a military operation in the Donbas region. And I also earlier spoke with our correspondent Giles Gibson, who joined me live from Moscow with respect to what Russia, of course, intends to do with this operation in Ukraine. And listening to what he had to say.
He is launching a special military operation, that justice and truth are on the Russian side as far as he's concerned, that this is about the denazification of Ukraine, a claim he made without any evidence whatsoever. And he said that there will inevitably be clashes between Ukrainian forces and Russian forces now going into that part of eastern Ukraine. Vladimir Putin was certainly clear that there are no plans to occupy Ukraine as a whole, but as I said, he very clearly acknowledged the chance that there will be military clashes, that there will be violence between Ukrainian forces and Russian forces. The Russian military has not confirmed that they have carried out any missile strikes, but as you say, we are getting reports from right across Ukraine, different parts of the country, most significantly in Kyiv, the capital, but also in the east of the country, in the south. There are reports of explosions being heard all over the country. We've also had Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, making an address on national television there, saying that he is declaring martial law across the entire country, that he has also spoken to US President Joe Biden. Just in the last few minutes, of course, the US President offering his support to the Ukrainian people. And Zelensky also had a clear message for his people, looking down the camera and saying, "I will be with you all the time, stay strong." So an emotional message there from the Ukrainian president as his country faces up to the reality of Russian boots on the ground in eastern Ukraine.
That was our correspondent Giles Gibson there, who joined me live from Moscow earlier this morning, telling us about what the Russian objectives are with respect to this military operation that Russia has launched into Ukraine. Because remember, at this point of time, although we've seen visuals of all of these missile strikes and the explosions that have taken place, it is not clear as to what Russia is trying to target. Is Russia trying to dismantle systematically the key infrastructure in Ukraine so that Ukraine would not be able to fight back? What is Russia at this point of time targeting? Are these airports? Are these oil fields? It's not very clear in terms of what Russia is, of course, systematically taking down. But at this point of time, what is clear is that this does look like a much more widespread sort of an incursion into Ukraine. This is not a limited war like what Russia fought back in 2014 when it annexed Crimea. In the annexation of Crimea, Russia, of course, had a very clear objective. It moved into Crimea and it, of course, annexed it in a pretty swift and a decisive military operation. But this time round, this is going to be a much more complicated military operation. The West, which for several weeks had been carrying out diplomatic efforts in order to try and create a deterrence for Russia, clearly has failed. War, it appears, has triumphed and in many ways trumped diplomacy. And Russia had been insisting that there are some red lines that it wants the West to, of course, appreciate and not cross over. It had insisted that NATO, the NATO military alliance, should not be expanding any further towards the east. It also said that it wanted clear guarantees that Ukraine would not be allowed to become a member of the NATO military alliance. And besides this, it also said that it wanted the NATO military alliance to roll back to the frontiers that it had in the year 2008. Many of these former Soviet republics, which of course became independent, they've been gravitating more and more towards the West. And this is what Russia was very unhappy about. And even though the Western nations have not been very clear with respect to what they are hoping would be the face of this conflict, the Western nations, although they said that they would not want to put a blanket ban on Ukraine joining the NATO military alliance, the fact of the matter is, with the military operation that Russia has now engaged in, it's difficult to see as to what would be the shape of Ukraine once this conflict ends.